Put my phone on do not disturb.
Oh, good idea.
Then that'll be like just when everybody wants to call.
Right, right, right. Boy, I see you on TV.
I know.
Boy, I saw
Well,
you on TV, honey.
well, hello everybody. We are now officially live. We are so excited about tonight's conversation, just being able to talk about, I believe, a very important topic, which is adult literacy. If you are just joining us for the first time, you may not be familiar with myself. I will just introduce myself. My name is Jarima Gorham. I am the founder and executive director of Burst Into Books. It's an organization that's been around since 2018, and we're really big about access and providing parents with advocacy, information that can help them be able to be their best selves, not only just for their children, but for them as well. And so, although our work is centered around youth, I'm very, very, very aware that it's about making sure that the whole home has what they need. And there's no way I can really have my students be able to thrive if their parents feel like that their skill sets that they may need to grow in as well. And so within the last recent years, we've heard a lot about like this learning loss that students have exhibited or they've experienced. But one thing that I feel like we don't always talk about is how do we really support the adults that are in those households who may prior to the pandemic experience learning loss, right? Whether their own education experiences for whatever reasons, right? And so sometimes getting help as an adult is a very humbling thing, and they don't know always where to go and necessarily what's the first steps. And so I was so happy to meet our guest for this evening, David, and just the work that he's doing because I believe it's so, so necessary. So if you are listening, whether on YouTube, Facebook, in the comments as we're talking, if you have questions or if you have comments that you would like to make, we will definitely be able to pull it up on the screen. I do want to shout out Gail. We see that you are here. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope that you can share this live with other folks. But again, it's really about having access to information. So whether something you hear could benefit you or someone in your life, we will hope that you will share this information so it can keep going. So before we get started, I would love for you, David, to just kind of tell a little bit about yourself and what even got you into this work.
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for having me on
Yeah.
your program. Really excited to be here and to have an alliance with you now as someone advocating for literacy here in Illinois. Um, as we all know, literacy is approaching a critical mass. Um, so our work is very powerful and also very much needed. Um, as far as my background, I started out teaching youth, working in public schools in Chicago. I taught team building and social emotional learning for middle school and high schools. And in addition to that, I trained teachers in social emotional learning, behavioral psychology, as well as what's called adventure education. Adventure education is simply, as I like to put it, a fancy term for team building and team development. What did I do? I played games essentially with youth, cooperative games, character education, and things like that. That work primed me for the work that I do now, working with adults. So I transitioned from working with youth in school settings to now working with adult populations in literacy. Um, so what's exciting about that for me is the ability to paint a picture of us as human beings in terms of the total human, not just focusing on academics, but then also focusing on the importance of social interaction. So how does that tie into literacy?
Mhm.
Well, literacy is social,
Yeah.
all right? We don't learn how to speak, read, and write without interacting with others. So human interaction is imperative towards building up our proficiency in literacy. So where literacy is lacking and below proficiency, um, the youth whether it's in a family structure, whether it's in a community, or within an environment such as a school, um, if the social interaction and if that student doesn't feel safe, um,
Mhm.
they're- they lose the ability to really grasp the learning experience, and thus they get put at a disadvantage when it comes to being proficient at being able to speak, being able to read and write, active listening, and
Yep.
interacting, which ends up affecting them in many other facets once they become adults. So, just in some, the work that I did as a youth really, for me, as an exciting layer to the work that I'm doing now, because I get to essentially train our volunteer tutors, which we'll speak about later, in best practices, not only in tutoring, but also in how do you help individuals get their psychological and motivational needs met.
Yep.
And when we talk about those things, we're talking about soft skills now, right? Um, so we're talking about problem solving and leadership and self efficacy, decision making, trust, personal responsibility, all those things that help us navigate in a variety of environments, but also help us navigate our own personal development.
Yeah, I totally agree. A comment that I was going to speak on, and I was going to actually say as well, as Gail said, that is so important. Social interactions need to be implemented because I believe at the root of everything, when I tell people that my work is centered around literacy, is really about allowing people to be able to communicate and share their stories, right? And whether that is through writing or reading or just listening, right? That actively listen that you talked about, and then just oral, right? Just being able to communicate. And a lot of times, uh, you may have adults that feel like, I'm past the years of intervention, right? Like maybe
Right.
I may not have these certain skills, but like, why would I need to get this support now? And again, it goes back to what you've been saying, like the importance of being able to communicate at any age. You want to be heard and you want to be understood. And so I
Yes.
think it's just understanding that there is a place for you to be able to get those skills. And as you talked about, whether it's those soft skills or just those just hard, like reading and writing, it's just so important for you to be heard.
Yes. And to piggyback on what you're saying, we the problem with the literacy deficit is that a lot of people don't know it exists.
Mm,
So when we look at the data that exists, I think the numbers around when we talk about nationwide, 59% of the nation doesn't even realize that the literacy is a nationwide problem.
mm,
So the lack of awareness exists. And when there's a lack of awareness, you don't put attention to things that you don't know about or don't consider. So we run into real problems because with the lack of awareness being present, there's no concerted effort to address the problem,
yeah.
at least on a coordinated front, right? I mean,
Mhm.
granted, there's a lot of initiatives that exist nationwide. There's lots of initiatives in the state of Illinois, but we're talking about millions of people nationwide that are below, you know, depending upon the studies,
Yeah.
um, reading and writing below fourth grade level or reading and writing below ninth grade level. Third grade, fourth grade, and ninth grade levels are where a lot of the data exists from different organizations
Hmm.
that have done this research, governmental organizations, not for profits. Um, so part of it is like you and I advocating
Yeah.
for the importance of this, how essential it is towards creating strong families, strong leadership,
Hmm.
independence. So then that way people can really realize their dreams and their goals and their hopes, because you know an individual becomes marginalized just by the fact that they're not literate.
Yeah. And then, so when we're talking about the supports, before we get into those supports, what are the areas in the city of Chicago that you serve?
Mhm.
Maybe even outside the city of Chicago, just for those who are tuning in. The supports that we're about to dig into, what are the locations that you primarily are present
Sure. So I currently work at South Suburban College, and that's going to be located right outside the city limits on the south end of the city. So South Suburban College is in the South Holland city, or it's a village. And so the jurisdiction of my specific program here covers Community College District 510. That district includes 21 cities and villages in the south suburbs.
Mm.
So we've got a lot of coverage area. Um, I liken it to my work will really never be done because the coverage area is so large that, even if I continue to do this for the rest of, my waking life, the illiteracy levels continue to increase. So part of the problem is that not only are there, you know, tens and hundreds of thousands of people in the state of Illinois alone that are below proficiency in terms of literacy, but that number is growing.
Mm.
So we're talking about, an ascendance of numbers that makes it very challenging to address on a larger scale. Um, the program that we run here at South Suburban College is called the Adult Volunteer Literacy Program. There's lots of acronyms in literacy, so we'll start off with that one,
Mhm.
which stands for, it's AVL is the acronym. Um, this is a state of Illinois funded program that is a competitive grant. So it's a state grant that we write for annually to receive funds to be able to implement this kind of work into the community
Mm.
and into the school here proper. So um, we write for these grants as well as many other organizations, whether they're libraries, not for profits, correction facilities, schools, school districts, and the like. So I think last fiscal year there were 68 uh, agencies that were awarded literacy grants
Mm.
in the adult volunteer literacy uh, area. So there's lots of organizations doing this work, but once again, those are spread out. I mean,
Yeah.
there's over 9 million people in Illinois alone. So of that, I think the data shows that maybe 11 to 15% of those individuals in the state of Illinois are reading and writing below proficiency levels. So, in fact, I just read something today that the state of Illinois falls 50th in terms
Mm.
of unemployment. So, when we talk about low literacy, we have
Yeah.
to talk about other socioeconomic issues. Um, and how literacy improves that. How does it improve your ability to get a job? How does
Yeah.
it improve your ability to command and receive more money as a result of that? And granted, these aren't blanket statements, right? There's always exceptions to the rule, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, but the data does show that mortality rates are lowered. So civic engagement increases. So um, we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so we take very seriously what we do here at South Suburban College because we are one of the agencies in this area. We have so much area to cover that we're constantly prospecting for volunteers, which we'll talk about later. But
Mhm.
we're also focused on raising awareness to the community, so in that way they know that these services are available. They are free services. So the great part about this is when you become an adult, there aren't many opportunities for free education or free
Yeah.
training, professional development. Well, this is one of them. And we're not the only agency that does this, obviously, but just in terms of the scope, we can service anyone who lives in the state of Illinois. The pragmatic part of that is, well, if you live in southern Illinois, you're not coming up to Chicago or to the south suburbs to receive these services.
Mhm. Mhm.
But if you live outside of those 21 cities and villages within the south suburbs that we cover in our Community College District 510, you can still receive these services. So, or let's say you reach out to us and you're not in our area, I will do the research or push you towards um, the hotline for the state of Illinois. So then that way we can find out what agencies are close to you so that you can take advantage of those services in proximity to where you live, um, like that. So,
Yeah, I just want to say you said a lot to unpack, which I love.
I'm sorry,
You're fine. You're
I've,
fine. And I take my mental notes, so don't worry. I'm never going to stop you. But
all right.
the one thing that I wanted to hit on as I see people tuning in more, is that there needs to be a clear understanding of like why literacy is so important and being literate. And you've already hit on things that I think people think are just not connected to being a well versed reader and writer, where it's like mortality rates,
Right.
fertility, unemployment, like health and wellness. A lot of times we're
Yes.
really big about, this like public health and wellness. All of this is tied into literacy because I believe that we're able to not only do the research necessary to make better decisions for ourselves, we're not only
Yes.
able to understand like the culture and climate of our neighborhoods and how we can make changes in those spaces and understanding the rights that you have. And um, my background is in teaching science, and I would talk to my kids a lot about this because we would do a lot of like environmental science and just like there's
Uh,
so much research that connects like education to mortality, right? Or
yes.
education to just like your longevity in life, like your quality of life, right? And just
Yes.
um my kids just understanding like it's bigger than the grade. Like this is just going to determine like your quality of life. And so I think so
Yes.
many times we just think that reading and writing, especially in the world we live in that's so tech savvy, right? I could just talk it to my phone, it'll do it for me, or I can just
Right.
get on Google and find out that way. But it's nothing like being able to process, comprehend, and understand something for yourself, right? And you're able to decipher what is true, what is facts, what is opinions, what are based upon research, what is not, and just being able to have the skills that's associated with literacy is just a very empowering skill to possess.
You really hit it on the head when you spoke about quality of life,
Yep.
um, comprehension. It's the end all be all when we speak about literacy. So
Yep.
when we talk about making meaning from what we're reading,
Yeah.
making meaning from what people are saying.
Yep.
Um, these are the things that are transformative, if you will, in terms of increasing one's quality of life. So, I mean, the good news is like you said, increasing, well, lowering mortality rates, stronger economies, um, more community involvement from people, and definitely a personal well-being increase. So
Yep.
comprehension allows for us as adults to navigate and to manifest
Yeah.
uh, what it is that we really want out of our lives. We uh, we take better care of ourselves, statistically speaking. Um, we uh, we engage with others more in terms of helping others more, um, and our family structures are stronger. When we look at literacy, and we look at the greatest determinant in a youth's ability to improve their reading and their writing. Um, guess guess what factor? This is just kind of a quiz for everyone out there, not specifically for you, but um, guess what's the greatest determinant for a child's literacy? Like, what's the greatest influence? That's what I'm trying to get at.
Oh, their parents.
Their parents. So it's their mother. So
Mm.
um,
A particular parent, the
a
mother.
particular parent, right? So, and
Gotcha.
granted, again, these are just, we're looking at statistics. This is not the end all be all. This is not the only way it works. There are many people who have become amazing, uh, you know, uh, all well around leaders. And they learned how to read not from their mother or
Yeah.
things like that. But when we look at the greatest influence, it's the mother that really has that direct connection. So um, let's look at a family structure for a minute. So when you have a family that is literate,
Mhm.
um, and that child is going to hear somewhere in the range of 30 million more words over their youth than a child whose parents fall further onto the spectrum of illiteracy.
Mhm.
So when we talk about the transference of literacy, it really does become generational because
Yeah.
remember, literacy is social, and you're in this family structure. So if your parent has a high level of literacy proficiency, that is literally handed down to that child. So, and that supersedes community involvement, that supersedes schools, um, all of that. So um, on the flip side, when we have adults who are parents who the proficiency doesn't exist as high, well, that becomes a disadvantage for that child.
Mhm.
And we already know that even when we look at um, literacy for early childhood education, here I can read some statistics for you really quickly.
Mhm.
2 out of every 10 children entering kindergarten with skills 2 to 3 years lower than their grade level. So, excuse me, two out of every 10 children entering kindergarten, they enter with skills 2 to 3 years lower than their grade level, and another two children out of those 10 start school with a 1 year disadvantage. Well, what does that mean? That means that students who are behind typically make 1 year's worth of progress, so they're never going to catch up without an additional influence. They're just, so they're already behind. Children of low literate parents, as we spoke about, are exposed to 30 million fewer words. So they're entering kindergarten already with a
Mhm.
skills gap, already. So, um, and the studies also show that when you have a low literate child, that does translate into behavioral issues.
Yeah.
So, and it's a determinant at first grade, it's a determinant at third grade. So these things become cyclical. So we have to have, it really does take a village, and especially if the parent structure is lacking some of these skills, well, there's resources available to them, but we need to make sure that they know about them and that they take advantage of them and that they're in their community, because if
Yeah.
they're not in their community, we all know that low literacy comes with a plethora of other social ills. um, and that might be in terms of low income, uh, inability to have a phone to
Mhm.
communicate, inability to commute because there's no funding for a car. So how do you get to these programs? And that's why volunteer tutoring programs are essential towards addressing the curve, because there's not enough funding existing both on the state level and the national level to really address these issues in a sizable manner. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah. I think we definitely like set the foundation as to why being literate and why it's so important that it's not just something we focus on when it comes to the youth, but very much so like the parents and adults that surround that child. Because especially in the beginning years, it's just imitation, right? Imitation of not
Right.
just words you say, but the things that you do and the practices that you keep. And you may not knowing or unknowingly know that you are already making an impression on what the relationship between reading should be, right? And so I know
Right.
that I tell my parents that a lot with book club. Like, yes, you're bringing your child to book club, but we also have books for parents because kids should see their parents reading, right? Like, if I see
Yes.
you reading, it's going to encourage me whether or not I want to do it, because ultimately I understand it's something that my parents think is important, because they only do things that they think is important, right? So if
Yes.
they're doing this thing, then I'm gonna do it. It's kind of hard to impart like the importance of a skill and you're not practicing it yourself, right? So getting on
Yes.
your child for not reading, but you're not reading, or getting on your child for being on too much technology and you're on too much technology, right? And so I think it's
Right.
just important we understand, you know, what we're doing. And so what you just spoke to, I would love for you to just like give color to what are the adult literacy supports that you all provide, so that if someone's watching, they're like, man, I need this information, I need these skills, I need the support. What would they get if they came out to the program that you are running right now?
Sure. So our program services all programs that are funded through the state of Illinois, which are called adult volunteer literacy programs. All those programs service adults 17 years and over and older who are not in high school anymore. So that is pretty much the requirement. In addition to that, all learners, we call them adult learners. So all of our adult learners that come in looking for assistance with their literacy have to test in.
Mhm.
It's not a pass fail kind of test. So that's one of the first things that I make very clear to all of our learners that come in. So what we're talking about is really an aptitude test.
Mhm.
So we're looking to find out at what level they're reading at. So in that way we can address that. We're looking at what level are their numeracy skills, which is math.
Yeah.
So the eligibility criteria, if you will, for being a part of at least the state of Illinois funded adult literacy programs are 17 years of age,
Okay.
resident in the state of Illinois, and you have to read below a ninth grade level after testing. So for someone that reads above ninth grade level, I'm going to work with them and try to find additional resources that can cater to them because their level of reading and writing are at a certain place where they're not eligible for this program. But if they're still looking for tutoring,
Mhm.
or they're looking for support in other ways, those do exist. In fact, we've got a drop-in tutor academic assistance center here at the college, which not only helps students, but it helps anyone over the age of 11.
Mm.
And there are no requirements. So my program is looking very specifically at adults who are reading below ninth grade level. So anyone who's reading or writing or doing math above that, whether they're focusing on their GED or whatever, there are other resources available. We essentially test here on site, whether it's a paper test or a computer test. Once they've completed that test and we've confirmed that their reading and or math is below ninth grade level, they become automatically eligible for those services. We do have a waiting list. However, I am conducting trainings every single month for our volunteer tutors who have to go through a rigorous minimum of 12 hours of training. We actually do more like 15 to 18 hours with homework just to prepare our tutors to be able to give the best possible tutoring to our learners. So we can generally match a learner within a couple weeks to maybe 2 to 3 months at most.
Okay.
And we obtain our South Suburban College obtains our learners from both our GED and our ESL programs, but as well from the larger community, from the community at large.
Awesome. So I've heard you talk
Mhm.
about volunteers. So
Yep.
I know that we have people that watch who may be like, hey, I'm in a position where I actually can support this work. I may not
Yes.
be someone who needs it, but I would love to be a support. What are the ways in which someone can become a volunteer to help in the adult literacy program?
It's very simple. So what we'll do before this program is over, I'll make sure that I'm sharing both my email
Mhm.
as well as my office number here. I can be contacted directly regarding this process. Also, anyone that's interested can go to our website, which is www.ssc.edu. Within that website, at the bottom of the page, there is a section devoted to adult education.
Gotcha.
So my program falls within the adult education department here at South Suburban College. And the adult education department has essentially 3 departments: adult literacy, GED, which is the equivalent of the appropriate term now is HSE, which stands for high school equivalency, only
Mhm.
because GED is a brand, you know. So HSE is the correct term. So we have a GED program, HSE program, and then we have an ESL program, which stands for English as a Second Language.
Yeah.
All these acronyms, I know.
And I'm like,
look, I had to take a whole class just to get all this stuff down. I tell you, I was like, I need to be briefed. So, um, so what occurs is on the learner end, as we've spoken about, they once we've deemed them eligible for the program, then we create a file for them where we essentially match volunteer tutors to work with that learner in public spaces. The most natural of those public spaces are going to be public libraries.
yeah,
We love libraries. And in large part because libraries are the only place that you can still go to and you're not expected to spend any money. Come on, let's keep it real. So, what a beautiful social center that essentially is really underutilized to this day. In fact, even more now post-pandemic.
yeah,
So I'm a huge advocate for libraries. We should all have library cards. We should all be visiting them just to hang out and just soak in that vibe. So our learners and our tutors meet in these public spaces and work on the goals of the learner. So when tutors are working with learners, again, they're going through a very rigorous training on how to be most effective in harnessing that learner's goals. So we keep everything what we call learner centered. And by keeping it learner centered, we're focusing on what that individual wants, right? It's not, we're going to focus on what I think you should know. No, what are you interested in? Because as adults, we're very goal oriented, right? We've got hopes, we've got dreams, we've got interests, we've got passions, we've got hobbies. So, we have an amalgam of things that we're into, and we want to cater the learning experience to our adults to be focused around what they're into. So if this adult wants to be able to read children's books to their child or grandchild, then we will focus on children's books. But if this adult wants to be able to read their employee handbook for their job, then we're going to build up to that employee handbook by focusing on certain, sight words and context clues and all the things that come with, learning whole language. To be able to give them the skills to be able to read it naturally, because an employee handbook is not a natural text.
No,
we don't talk like that. So it's a high goal to reach, right? So, but to that end, there are a lot of adult materials and strategies that exist to support adult literacy and the adult learner. And we use all of those, whether it's an extreme low literacy adult or it's a English as a second language learner who might be very literate in their native language, but they're not literate in English, right? They're not able to speak and read and write in English, but they might have a college degree in their native language.
exactly.
So we look at all these specifics and we cater to the needs of that adult. So that way we are being effective and we are inspiring and we're motivating them to become a self-directed, self-motivated learner, because that's the ultimate goal is to not be the sage on the stage, but to be the guide on the side. So we're not focused on showing off. We're focused on showing how. All right. And a lot of that just comes down to, caring, right? Novel concept there. And, to focus and to give your time to really delve into what this individual wants and cater to that. It might be reading a menu. Low literacy adults, they go to, a restaurant, and I do the same thing. I'll say, well, what's your favorite dish? Right? Because I want to know what the experts know, but I can read the menu. But if someone can't read the menu, then they might go to the extent of asking the server, well, hey, what do you like here? And then they're just going to choose that. And that's hindering their experience because they're not able to really look at the options that are available to them. And, a menu is just one example of the restricted options that they're not able to provide for themselves. And we want to address and confront that heads on.
Yeah. And I wanted to just shout out a comment someone put in the chat, which I was actually thinking about, where I think it's to the point where you said they may have a PhD in their own current language, but English or reading in a particular text can be challenging. So they said they taught ESL at Perry State. This is a true
Nice.
statement. And
Thank
for
you for your
me,
service.
yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Because even today, I was in a workshop where it was a very diverse group. Some of us were, from birth English speakers. Others were not, and I
Hmm.
was very, very encouraged by the facilitator because they did like translation, right? So that those they wouldn't like be hung up by the language barrier, so that they could just speak.
Yes.
And I think that it's important we understand that, like when we're saying we just want to help people be better communicators, that is not saying that because the way you communicate is wrong, right? Or because of
Right.
what you do is not appropriate. We just want you in all settings to feel the most comfortable because you may not have that luxury of having a translator, right? Or you may not have the opportunity to have someone who will just like give you the cliff notes real quick, right? Like going to a restaurant and like, hey, this is my favorite thing. Okay, I'll get that. You may be in a
Right.
situation where you're like, here, choose, figure it out, and you need to be able to have the skills to do that. And I was actually very happy that I was in a situation where I actually was a minority in the communication because they're speaking Spanish so fluently, and I was on the
Uh-huh.
outside, like, wow, and it just made me think about like how many times we can be in spaces where we're not sensitive to that. That is the experiences when maybe you have English as their second language, and we're just like going at it, going at it, going at it, right? And we're like, well, you
Right.
just need to catch up, you just need to figure it out, But it's really about I would also need to be supported if I was in their homeland, right? Or in their home setting. And so I think that at the end of the day, we're just talking about how we can really just support people overall because
Yes.
there are spaces and places where what works in one space is not transferable automatically in another space. And
Correct.
I'm so grateful that you have these services where they're free, right? We love free
Yes. Free. Free 99.
and customized because
Yes.
I've also experienced not necessarily an adult literacy, but even for children programs and tutoring where it's a very set curriculum. And regardless of what you came in knowing, we're going to do this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Where I like to hear that we're really just trying to help people to hit their goals. And so I would love at this time, you had a success story to share of maybe an adult who went through the program or just in the number of years of you doing it that you're very proud of about the work that you're doing.
Sure. Sure. So we have quite a few success stories here, just in South Suburban. Though I've certainly heard other success stories, throughout the nation as well, while attending conferences and various workshops. Um, I think without speaking to a very specific story,
Yeah,
what I enjoy about the success stories are um, watching the enthusiasm of the individuals approach their goals and realize them. Um, we uh, we have students who come into get additional support with their literacy. So, for example, they're in their GED program or they're in an ESL program, but they're really not able to tackle that program with the same rigor that they anticipated to, and that can be frustrating, right? So, when you're low literate, um, it you have to it's challenging to be able to cope not being able to read and write in a reading and writing society. So um, there, so when you get to a point where you get a tutor or you get back in school and you're like, I want to get this GED or I'm going to learn English as an immigrant. Um, Sometimes the expectations aren't as realistic as you would want them to be, right? As an adult, we want things. It's not so much as though I want this right now, but I want more for myself, and I want to, I don't want to feel like I'm behind. A lot of low literate adults, um, unfortunately, feel like they are being left behind. They're not able to get. Um, they're not really living the life that they dreamed that they wanted to in that very moment. So what we're doing is we're trying to help them address that and say, wait a minute, there's 8 billion people on the planet. We cannot all do the same things at the same time. Like, this is literally what I'm telling, our learners. Because what we don't want is we don't want for their self-efficacy to be so low that, they already feel, there's a sense of self-defeat, there's a sense of learned helplessness, which can translate into internalized depression. And that's cyclical, right? That's really hard to get out of. So without speaking, to a specific example, 'cause there's plenty of those. I think the theme of being able to become self-empowered
Yeah.
is the one theme that I'm seeing over and over again in many different ways that becomes so powerful for me, that it reminds me that this work is so much bigger than what I had ever envisioned it to be. It's eternally humbling for me. It's some of the most important work that I can consider doing, outside of saving lives, or being a farmer, if you will. We all have to eat. So the sense of purpose for me, it fuels me through all of these success stories where, a student comes in and they're like, okay, I want to get this GED done. Let's go. But then they realize that they really don't have those skills to be able to get that GED in the time frame that they wanted. This individual might be a grandmother in her 50s.
Yeah.
So she's raised children, she's raised grandchildren, and now she's doing it's her turn. But she's in this class and she's seeing other learners who dropped out of school, and they're younger. So she's dealing with this like, well, she's feeling like life has passed her by. I've heard this. This is not me alluding to, a hypothetical. I've seen this. So seeing that becomes heartbreaking for me, because here she is in class and speaking about, how she just doesn't feel like she's done life right, if you will. And, being able to be that consolation for her, that reiteration that, no, you're good. Why? Because you're here right now. And it's going to be all right. And let's focus on the task at hand. And let's not dismiss or discount all the achievements you've done in your life, right? Because reading and writing, though it enhances life, it doesn't, negate life. Like, you're not going to stop living because of an inability to read and write. So, just kind of giving people a lighthouse to be able to say, hey, you're in the right space because you're here. Has been such a transformative thing for me in my work to continue to push forth with this work and to dedicate my waking hours to it, because we're seeing this over and over again. Those that commit, and sometimes people fall out of these programs, right? So, not everybody that comes through gets their GED or, gets to a level of proficiency, because real life, we're adults, tugs us in different directions. But we give, our best effort to every individual towards that end, because we all deserve this, and we all should be in a place where we're able to provide for ourselves and to be able to grow with lifelong learning.
Yeah, I agree. Something that stood out to me in what you said, I actually recently watched this amazing documentary about Toni Morrison. And
Nice.
Toni Morrison spoke to why was she so like in love with words and reading. And she was saying at a very young age, she used to see her grandfather, right? And he was like an avid reader. Like she said, he read the Bible like 5, 6 times, and he was just so like, just felt so proud to be able to say that statement. And later on in life, it's because she realized ultimately that, of course, he was learning to read in a time and space when we were forbidden to be able to know how to read, right? And
Correct.
that was his like revolutionary act. Like, I can read, so I'm gonna keep reading. I'm gonna keep growing. And so she
I love
became
it.
like so enthralled with that. But then also she continued to read because she understood the power of words, and words can change situations and mindsets, and she just became always seeking more power, right? And so I think to your statement when we're talking about this 50-year-old grandmother who's getting tutoring, or to someone who maybe feel like I'm way along in my age, or I dropped out of school, or it's not really about whether or not you miss your boat, but we're really just trying to empower you, like give you power. You're
That's right.
getting your power back, right? You take
Yes.
you're getting a skill that no one can take from you, right?
Yes.
Like the moment you've read something, the moment you've been exposed to new information, that's what you for life, right? You can't unsee a word. You can't erase an experience you had when you read something. And so again, I think that is we just have to change the language as to why we need to be more literate. We need to be more literate because it makes you more powerful. It
Yes.
makes
Yes.
you
I love it.
more sustainable. Like it allows you to be able to really feel as if you have options and choices in a world like when her grandfather learned how to read, where he had very limited to no choices. He understood the power that came with him being able to know how to read because it allowed him to know there's something bigger than my current circumstances, right? And so,
Mm.
even as we see on the screen, say I love this. I have a student of a Spanish speaking student at Thornton, and I try to diversify our curriculum so they are on the same page. I really love this.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
I see our friend Beverly is on here. Hi, Beverly. So first of all, shout out to Beverly because Beverly
Shout out.
and me and David even know each other, and now we are tied. We're gonna keep doing this work together. But she says, "I've taught children and adults. It is so rewarding to help adults improve their reading and writing skills. The joy
Yes.
on their faces when they read something is so amazing. I've done this for many years and I love it."
Ah,
So that is just
fantastic.
awesome. Awesome, awesome. So I think just as we are continuing, you talked about one thing that I'm always really big about is collaboration and partnerships. And
Yes.
so we can't do this work on our own. I believe that we all have something that we can lend to each other so that we're able to be better and more effective in our work. And so if someone is watching and maybe they are connected with a school or they have their own nonprofit or a church or anything like that,
Yes.
are you seeking or looking for any type of partnerships, or are there any upcoming things that people could collaborate with you in order to get the word out more?
Sure. Sure. Well, the first thing I would love to speak about is the importance of volunteer tutoring.
Mm,
Um, really, when we talk about, if we think about the human body for a second, and we use that as an analogy for literacy, all right, the volunteer tutor becomes the blood that makes your body work.
mm,
So without the volunteer tutor, there, there, what we remove is the social interaction that is necessary to be able to transfer the skill of literacy, and that includes reading, writing, speaking, listening, numeracy, and so forth. So the we are always looking for caring adults that are interested in supporting literacy initiatives like ours and the others in the state of Illinois. Um, so, um, one of the best ways to become a volunteer tutor would be to find one of our agencies, which you can find at the Illinois State Library Secretary of State's website, which is
mm,
ilsos.gov. So that's ilsos.gov. And on there, you'll find the literacy initiative through the Secretary of State. So let's say you're not in South Suburban College's area and you're looking to volunteer. You can find out a list of those agencies that offer this programming to become a volunteer. Um, the state of Illinois requires 12 hours of training just to be
mhm,
able to work with another adult. Like, how amazing is that? So, you've got to go through a professional development training just to be able to volunteer. So, you're getting skills. All right. You're learning about instructional strategies. You're learning about the characteristics of adult learners. You're learning about reading and writing and math strategies. You're learning about multiple intelligences and
mhm,
learning styles. You're learning about um, ESL and how to cater your teaching strategies to a limited English proficiency learner. So so there's a lot of growth that occurs just to be able to do that. I encourage everyone to become a volunteer. It doesn't have to be literacy, but you want to reclaim and regain your hope for humanity. Go help somebody. So case in point. Um, You want to feel good? Make somebody else feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And so dialing that back into the literacy part, um, being able to help someone in that capacity is some of the most powerful work that I do as a tutor myself. Um, and we encourage everybody to look at themselves as someone that can do this. You don't have to devote your week to doing this. We're talking about an hour. After you go through a training, um, we're talking about an hour a week, 2 hours a week, close to your house, helping someone who's from your community, right? Who's a neighbor, if you will. So that would be one way to partner with an organization or an agency. Another thing is we are always looking for community partners that align with literacy. So for CBOs, community-based organizations, and not-for-profits that do similar work, I'm always looking for ways to support other not-for-profits doing their work. Most specifically on literacy, like yours, I'm always here to support everything that you do. But even if it's something that's not specifically literacy focused, libraries, community centers, we definitely show up and promote our programming. But also, we have programming as well. If an organization wanted to come out and share their programming, we actually have coming up November 17th, which is National Family Reading Night. We are having our family reading night here at South Suburban College. It will be occurring here on the main campus at South Suburban College, 15800 South State Street in South Holland from 6 to 8 p.m. Um, we are having a variety of activities which will be focused around the family. So this is a family event. So we want you to bring out your children and your significant others, bring out the whole family, bring out your neighbors. We will be having readings that will occur from volunteer readers who will read excerpts from children's books, local authors that have written children's books, reading excerpts from their books. We're actually in the process of securing a puppeteer, a
Ooh.
face painter, as well as a balloon artist. So we're in the process of securing those things for the event, and this is something that we're looking at making continual. We'll also have a caterer that will be coming out and doing some finger food. We have a popcorn maker, and then we'll have a variety. Burstintobooks.org will be there, and some of their community partners as well. So again, what we're doing is looking at if there are organizations and not-for-profits that would like to be a part of that event or any other subsequent events that we're doing, we would definitely love for you to reach out to myself or to burstintobooks.org and let them know what your interests are so we can find a way to collaborate with you.
I love it. I love it. So, as we are coming to the closing of this conversation, which I've loved so much, and I appreciate everyone
Likewise.
who has been listening and giving feedback and hearting and liking this. The first thing I would ask you to do is to share this, right? Like David gave some amazing resources, some statistics, just ways that you can get support from his personal staff and volunteers, how you could become a volunteer. And again, because this is live, you're able to go back and watch the replay. And so someone you may know, like, hey, they could benefit from this. Like share the link to them to this, right? So they're able to hear and get connected and be able to learn how they can volunteer, how they can get services, or maybe how your organization can partner. The second thing that I would say is just to understand that again, the way we're going to be able to combat the literacy issue and mountain of things in both youth and adult is through us doing collaboration, right? And through us being able
Yes.
to understand that, David is doing his work, but he can't do it by himself. And so if you're watching and you want to be a part of, you heard what he's looking for his event, if you are connected to any of those individuals, like reach out, right? I'm sure he will take in more and more people to support this family literacy night. And then last but not least, Burst into Books, as I've had scrolling at the bottom of the screen. That's how you can join our mailing list. Every month we do parent workshops. Last month our workshops were centered around health and wellness. as kids were going back to school, we had a platform where we had one talk with a pediatrician, and parents were able to do like a Q&A and ask questions in regards to anything vaccination and health and wellness. And then our first workshop was with a doula, right? And she was talking a lot about just, fertility and just like health with our infants and our most precious babies, right? And how we can in our households make better decisions. And now we're talking about adult literacy. And so each month we will have different workshops that will truly be empowering for our community. And so we're able to be more advocates for ourselves and have access to resources. So again, follow us. You'll be updated on our upcoming workshops. And if you are watching and would like to possibly be someone that's a part of one of these workshops, I would love to connect with you as well. I'm also very aware that we have a resourceful and knowledgeable audience that I believe that sometimes we just need to give people platforms so they're able to share what they know as well. But David, if one last time before you go, if you can just say it, your contact information, the best
Sure.
way to stay connected, and then we will end our conversation for the night.
Sure. First of all, once again, thank you for having me. I'm grateful for the time to be able to share with you and to talk about some of the things that we are both very passionate about. What I can do is I've got my information here on a slide for you as well. So if you want to share it visibly, we could do that.
Yeah, let's do that.
Whether you want to become a volunteer tutor or you're interested in receiving tutoring services, you can reach out to me directly at dstevens@ssc.edu, or you can call me directly at 708-596-2000. My direct extension here is 2558. So again, if you're looking to volunteer tutor, or if you're looking to receive tutoring services to improve your literacy, we can both help you with that or refer you to an organization or agency that is closer to you that can help cater to your needs locally.
Love it. So you see his info is on the screen. Screenshot it. Do what you need to do. Contact him. Again, this is for if you're looking to support, be a volunteer, get services yourselves, or partner, collaborate. Again, do not hesitate for what you are trying to do. Before we close out, we have one last comment from our viewers, which I truly appreciate because, again, it's just really about us creating a safe space and being able to be community, whether it's in person or virtual. So we have a comment. Thank you both for all that you do. Your work is truly making our world a better place. I enjoy this very much and will share this recording.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate
Thank
you. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
So as we come to a close, again, our conversation tonight was about adult literacy support. Again, we are never too old to get our power. That's what we had to sum up this whole conversation. We just were talking about ways you get more powerful. So hopefully we take advantage of it so that we're able to really get to where we need to be as a community. And as you talked about, a lot of the habits that we have are going to be transferred to our next generation. And so whether you feel like you may not have it, and you do it for the people coming under you, right? Do it because you know that what their quality of life matters for you as well. We always, as parents, I'm a mother, I'm always doing things, even if I don't feel like it, because I understand the sacrifice is worth it at the end because it's going to create an easier road for my son. So I pray that as parents, as communities, we think about that we are doing things that are really deposits into our children's future. So thank you, David, again.
Thank
I will
you.
see you soon.
Very soon.
And, for everyone else, have a great rest of your evening. Take care.
Bye for now.